So, you want to play Yu-Gi-Oh? Well, better late than never. And with Yu-Gi-Oh gaining more attention due to Master Duel being released, even though it was like a year ago, some players might want to give the real game a shot. So this video will give you an understanding of what you need to know in order to start playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And this video is meant for all players, especially new and returning players. I broke this video down into segments for you, so if you know what I'm about to say, then you can just skip, but I recommend that you watch the whole thing just in case you miss something you might not know. First, pros and cons. Second, what you really need to know. Third, clearing up confusion. And then fourth, where and what to play. In this list, I'm going to start with the pros. First, the game is very personable, meaning that you can basically play whatever you want. Some people play decks that they just like because they like the pictures. Some people play decks that they like just because of how they play. And some people just play decks just because they're meta, or some people play decks just because they're off meta. It's really all up to you on what you want to play. If you're starting to play, I would recommend going with something that you like instead of something that might be meta relevant or something that might be more competitive. If you're looking for more of a competitive scene, then definitely go for it. But if you're just starting out, definitely do something that you look at and you think, oh, I like how that plays, or I like how that looks. So definitely do that first. Next is that there's consistent changes with the game. So what that means is that they always have a ban list coming out, I think about 3 or 4 times a year, so that the game is always changing. If you look back in Yu-Gi-Oh's little history of, let's say, even just 2 years ago, the meta-relevant decks and decks that were consistently played are completely different than what's being played right now. Those changes are really healthy for the game, just because they keep the game different all the time. So instead of it being like 5 years ago that one deck is really good, but now 5 years later it's not as good anymore because there are other things that are just better. However, that doesn't mean that whatever was good 5 years ago still can't be played now. That's kind of the beauty of the game, is that sometimes older cards or older archetypes end up surfacing again because they're just good again. Next is low cost in most cases. And what I mean by this is that usually you can pick up an entire deck for less than $100. Now this is due to some factors, like one being that the cards are reprinted. So usually whenever they become reprinted, it means that they're usually in either a lower quality than what they were before, making them cheaper to get. However, if you want to get like the top tier deck, you're going to be spending a lot more money. That's up to you if you find it more worth it or not, but you can play fairly competitive or casual decks for a very low cost. Next is that it is a collectible game. I mean, like any card game, they're all collectible. You get to pick what cards you want to keep, you get to collect, you get to search, you get to find. Sometimes really the beauty of the game is going to your card shop with a whole bunch of other players, looking in their binders and just seeing what they have. And then if they have something that you want to put in your collection, then you can trade. Next is that Yu-Gi-Oh has one of the best casual environments. And what I mean by that is that you don't have to play competitively all the time. A lot of card shops welcome that sort of thing, to have a casual environment. And other players actually recommend it too. I can tell you how many times I went and I had a really super fun time against just a random deck because they really like to just play the deck. And sometimes I do it too. Sometimes I go to my locals and I play whatever I like to play. You don't have to play competitively all the time, and it's just super welcome everywhere. Now let's go on to the cons of the game. So first, with the cons, it's lack of communication between Konami and the players. Konami is the corporation behind Yu-Gi-Oh! They set the ban list, they set out news, they release all the cards. They are the company. However, they don't really communicate with the players other than just that, the ban list and the other news that they release about their products. Another thing about Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that I am not going to lie to you, it is tough to learn. However, no one is really a true master at the game. There are some people that are called judges. These judges typically know how almost everything interacts, and sometimes they carry around a pamphlet, or there might be multiple judges at an event that will help just in case some kind of ruling comes up and nobody knows how to deal with it. Next is that it might take a long time to get a hang of things. What I mean by this is not just rules, but other certain etiquettes that you might not have picked up on before, but you are starting to learn and starting to get used to after you've been playing for a while. And that will take some time as well. Next is the competitive environment is taken very seriously. And what I mean by this is I don't want you to be scared to go play in a tournament or whatever you decide to do, but whenever a competitive event is happening, then there are certain things that you have to follow. For example, if your friend is playing in front of you, you can't help them play their hand. That is seen as a big no-no, and I think there's actually some penalties that go along with it. Now, if you go to your locals, it's much more relaxed because people are still trying to learn. But if you decide to go to a regionals or a YCS, then those things have to be cut off completely. Sometimes some people take locals very seriously because they only go to locals. Just recognize those players pretty much and plan accordingly or do accordingly. And lastly, kind of like what I said before in the pros, is that there is a high price tag for competitive cards or really good cards. Now these cards are going to come in these packs or in these boxes. Some people have the money to buy them, some people don't, and they just buy the packs. Either way is totally fine. However, if you want to get a certain card and it's typically really good in almost every deck, then it's going to have a high price tag. Sometimes some cards alone, just one card, costs more than the entire deck. Now, it's up to you if you see it as worth it or not. However, there usually is other options to play instead of that one card. But if you want to be more competitive and be a better player, then usually those cards are worth picking up. Now let's get out of that pros and cons list. Now here are some things that you need to know in order to start playing. First, like I mentioned before, a ban list. These are cards that are either banned, limited, or semi-limited. And then everything else in the card game you can have a max of 3 of. So for example, a very notorious card in the game is Max C. Now this card is currently banned as of this video that I'm making, which that means you cannot have any of that card in your deck. Next, an example of a limited card is Monster Reborn. Now this card you can only have 1 of in your deck. Next is semi-limited. Now these are cards that you can only have up to 2 of. And as of making this video, right now Pot of Desires is only at 2. So that means that you can only have a maximum of 2 of this card in your deck. Now you might be asking, where do I find this information at? Well, I'll put a link below, but if you search up Yu-Gi-Oh! Ban List, it's the first link that comes up on Google. But I'll have the link below just in case you ever want to come back and you need to find it quick and easy. Now to continue on with some other things that you need to know in order to start playing are some rules of the game. Now, there are some helpful tools out there. My go-to thing to do, if you are a new player especially, is to download Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. Now this is completely free on all platforms, and the reason why I say you should download it is because they have things in there that teach you how to play. And another option too is to just look up a YouTube video on exactly how to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, I'm not going to get into anything on exactly how to play Yu-Gi-Oh! In this video because those videos take a really long time. But to get just a baseline, I recommend watching some of the videos that I have down in the description. Now, these are other need-to-know things that didn't really fit in what I said in earlier. So, the first thing is that some decks are just better than others. If you've been playing for a long time like I have, sometimes you might just run into a deck that you just can't do anything about. And that's completely okay. All decks are supposed to have weaknesses. Next is I get asked this a lot, what is the difference between OCG and TCG? To clarify, OCG means original card game and TCG means trading card game. The difference between OCG and TCG really just runs down to the ban list. Now, OCG has their own ban list and TCG has our own ban list. Do not follow OCG unless you live in Japan. Everything else is just TCG. And then another thing that you need to know is that there might be some hidden meanings or shortened names of cards. So for example is the card Ash Blossom of Joyous Spring. Sometimes people might call it just Ash, and then everybody knows what that means. And then another example is DPE. This card stands for Destiny Hero Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer. Some people just call it DPE because obviously saying that whole card is going to be a whole mouthful during a game. But if you are unsure of what they just said, do not bother to ask. I ask all the time still, and I've been playing for years. So just don't be afraid to ask, but be aware of that. And next, I kind of covered this just a tiny bit earlier, but it's the proper etiquette that you should have whenever you're playing a game or whenever you're watching someone play a game. Now, there are certain things that you should and shouldn't do. So like I said before, you should not help your friend that is sitting in front of you at a regionals tournament playing a game, because that would be considered cheating. However, if there is a ruling thing, what you should do is always ask a judge for the ruling. Don't ask your friend, don't ask their friend. Always get clarification in order to sort some kind of thing out, if you do end up going to something like that. Usually locals have a lot of people who are really informed, and sometimes there's usually that one person that everybody goes to for ruling. So just make sure you're aware of that person, say, hey, I don't know, I don't understand, and they will be more than glad to help you. Alright, now we're getting to the end of the video. I know, I'm long-winded too. But where do you go in order to start to play? Now, I kind of already answered this question before, is that there are local card shops, but you want to look for card shops that are OTS. What that means is official tournament stores. They receive products from Konami in order to give for tournaments. And if you're unsure of where your closest OTS store is, I will link down in the description a web page of where you can find all this stuff. Or you can actually go on your phone and get the Yu-Gi-Oh! Neuron app, and that will actually tell you where your closest OTS store is. And if you're looking to play more competitively, these features also show where regional and YCS tournaments are. Now, the difference between regional and YCS is that regionals are usually you buy a ticket and you can go in, and YCSs you usually have to be asked to come in. Now, I wouldn't recommend doing that within your first year or two of playing the game, but if you feel like that you're progressing at a decent rate and that you are actually getting way better at the game and you're starting to win a lot more, and if you really like the game, then just go to a regional. I haven't been to one personally yet, but I heard that they are a lot of fun and it's super awesome. And then another thing too, if you don't feel like going right to your card store and you want to just kind of play in your own home, like I said before, download Master Duel and get the hang of things. Or you can actually go online, and there is a website called Dueling Book. I use Dueling Book all the time. What Dueling Book is it basically is like a Yu-Gi-Oh! Simulator. It has every card, it's always updated with the ban list, and you can build a deck out of there. You can actually play test it. There are some YouTube videos out there on how to navigate Dueling Book. It might be a little bit overwhelming at first, so I would recommend Master Duel first, and then once you get the hang of things, go to Dueling Book. Or if you have a friend that plays Yu-Gi-Oh!, then have them show you how to use Dueling Book, because almost everybody that plays Yu-Gi-Oh! Uses Dueling Book. And very lastly, what to decide to play. Now, what I recommend first is that you play whatever you like. It doesn't matter if it's good, it doesn't matter if it's bad, it doesn't matter if it's in between. Just play whatever you see that you like. I guarantee you that you'll have a better experience starting the game rather than just playing whatever's super meta right now and then getting confused the entire way. I would also start simpler. Now, I'm going to recommend some decks that are helpful for people who are just starting. First, I would recommend Zombies. Second, I would recommend Dark World. And third, I would recommend Machina. Now, these are all very simple and very cheap decks to pick up if you want to get the actual in real life cards. I have deck profiles of 2 out of those 3 decks, so go check them out. If you want to go the more competitive route, then I would recommend something more like Sky Striker or Branded Despia. These decks are well under $100, so if you want something a little bit more competitive, go pick those up. Now, if you like my content, please leave a like below, and please let me know what you think in the comments down below. I plan on doing some things like this in the near future of how to play Yu-Gi-Oh! And how to read cards and all that stuff. So please let me know if you want to see that. Thank you.